In this episode, we talked to Greg Lawton about AI and its application in projects, but I think we went all over the place, which is usual for us, Dale. But what are your takeaways, mate?
Oh, there were so many. Greg is amazing. He has this way of explaining things and zooming in and zooming out, giving perspective on all sorts of things. And I think the key takeaway or takeaways for me is that there's still a lot to be done around governance, regulation, training, and education. I love the analogy he used about, AI being like gunpowder and not everyone's sure on how to use it. So you could, make a mass explosion in a room, or you can actually use it for some good, perhaps. I don't know. I don't know if gunpowder can be used for good, but yeah, what do you think, Val?
Yeah, fireworks. You can use it for fireworks.
Like this
I
place.
think I think the
It's at
application
Sydney
is
Harbour.
well, I think the value is really the notion of AI being a co-pilot rather than being someone who's going to take your job.
Mm,
And I love the idea that you have this uh, personal assistant that never sleeps. Is kind of how I would say. But it was a great time to chat to Greg. We love having Greg on the show. He has a great vast knowledge in this area, and he obviously loves it very much. So yeah, sit back and enjoy, guys.
yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree. Leslie, keep listening, keep liking, and keep paying it forward.
We understand construction. I think how we can help is identifying that risk up front and enabling the transparency that our tools bring to the table.
Hello, project people. Welcome back to a brand new episode of the Project Chatter podcast. It's always good to have you with us. And it's good to see you again, Dale. How are you, sir, after an amazing PCG in London?
I am fantastic, thank you. It was phenomenal, Val. Once again, I think we had 300 people plus. There was no space in the room. We were
Amazing.
extremely blessed to have an amazing panel discussing all things AI related on projects. We also were blessed with the guest we have today on the podcast, who got amazing accolades afterwards. He doesn't know, but I did. I did inform him that he was spoken about very, very kindly.
Oh, who could that be? Very, Mr.
Who
Greg. Welcome back, mate. Good to see you again.
Good to see you both. Good to see you.
I think he's blushing. No,
People are saying
it
nice
sounded like
things about me. I don't know what to say about that.
yeah, it's great. It's great to hear that secondhand as well. That
is.
you had such an impact. But it is an important subject that you were obviously talking about on the night, and you had a massive turnout in London. So well done to all the Londoners that turned out. What was the subject matter that really got everyone thinking?
I think that the topic we landed on was, what does AI mean for projects? How's it going to impact project delivery? But it went all over the show, right, Greg? I mean, we spoke everything from productivity, which jobs are going to change, how's it going to get governed, the ethics
Mm,
around it, who should govern it. Probably sets us up well for this one, Greg.
Indeed. Indeed. I'm
perfect,
just going to
perfect,
regurgitate some stuff that was. See if I can remember
excellent,
it.
excellent. Well, you should. I mean, I think there's, I mean, the hype hasn't gone down. I mean, a lot of people have always thought that AI was a bit of hyperbole, which, into some degrees, it is. But it's not going away, which is a interesting thing about things. Once they get into the public eye, let's call it, it starts to stick, and that's how I kind of feel about it. It's not going away. It in fact is increasing in velocity. I think it feels like it. Perception is always faster than reality, but I do think that that most projects are thinking about it, but don't necessarily know how to adopt it.
Mhm.
So when we say AI, let's just get some baselines out there. What are we talking about here in terms of AI? What does that include or exclude, for that matter?
Well, AI is almost like saying engines. It's like
Yeah.
there's a lot of different kinds of engines. What are you talking about? Electric motors? Are you talking about diesel, petrol? Are you talking about 8-cylinder, 6-cylinder, all of this kind of thing? The way that I kind of think about it is AI are sets of algorithms that are generally non-deterministic. So it's not just x equals 2y. Like there's some non-determinism in there that essentially try to replicate or improve on activities that we'd regard as human thought. So AI is
Mm.
not an engine replacing muscle power. So it's not a digger lifting stuff, and it's not a car transporting you down the motorway. AI is trying to be the driver of the car. So the human thought in it. Or in project controls, it's trying to be the one thinking about what does the data mean? How do I update the data? What would I do to the project to make it better? These kinds of things. So it's like from a technological perspective, it's non-deterministic algorithms generally with learning parameters within them. But for the audience, the way to think about it is it is mind automation is what it is.
Yeah, so it's almost like it's emulating more a humanistic model rather than a machine model. The idea that, you know, a machine has one function to carry out, but this is like it's trying to be more like us rather than more like another machine, like an engine, or some bulldozer or something else. It's actually more inclined to be symbiotic with us, which is a scary sci-fi movie right there. But where do you think? I think this has been asked a few times in terms of, you know, fast hitting. Where is it going to hit first in terms of disruption? Because I think there is definitely a disruption in the job market. I know a lot of people think that they're going to lose their jobs, but we all know it's just going to enhance the job. Where do you think that's going to hit first, and why?
So I saw a graph the other day from a newsletter that I subscribe to. I can't remember the name of it, but I was like, yes, I completely agree with that. And it was a graph that said for very labor-intensive manual jobs, there'd be very little impact. As you get into white-collar individual contribution jobs, very high impact, so like 60, 70%. And then as you go into managerial, it slips down. And then as you go into leadership, it bottoms out at like 10%, something like that. And I think all of this sounds surprising if you don't actually look at it from the fundamentals of what the technology is kind of offering. So if I kind of peel back all of the layers and just say it how it is, about 20 years ago, it would have taken years to train a model that today we can train in a day. And that advance has actually been in two parts. One is the science, and actually the second is computer processing, but specific things like GPUs. So the actual processing for AI has done this. If you want proof of that, just Google NVIDIA's share price since it began. It literally is like that when it started producing AI-geared GPUs. So one is we just got crazy levels of processing power compared to what we did have. And then the second element is for the first time, we didn't have to deterministically program a computer and tell it how to behave in every single situation. Like imagine telling a computer how to behave in a social setting of 100 people. Like if someone says this, say this. Like there's infinite possibilities, so it's so hard to program. Whereas now what you can do is actually just give the computer a huge amount of data, some guidelines, and go figure it out for yourself. So those two things combined, essentially, this is a new set of techniques that we can let loose on tasks that we've never had technology to do before. That's why people are seeing it as so groundbreaking. And then there's a third element, which is actually the most important element, is that it's been made accessible. The biggest innovation was a product one, not a technology one, because OpenAI had those algorithms. Google had those algorithms for like 4 years, similar ones. Where were they? Well, I'll tell you where they weren't. On a very simple chatbot that you could Google and access in 2 clicks.
I agree. I think you hit it on the head. I mean, I've been saying the same thing, that human interface piece, you know, the low tech almost approach, because chatbots have been around for ages, right? We've all seen and been annoyed by them, but for that to be the the frontier, the mask, if you like, of the capability of what it can actually do is pretty impressive. I mean, it seems to have caught Google off guard a bit because they were scrambling to get Bard out to market after that. Didn't take them long because, as you said, they had the technology already.
They're pretty
But
good. They're pretty good people.
I think it's like a mass email, right? Hey guys, shit, we need to do something right now. Let's
There's just
pivot.
a big red button on someone's desk with release.
Yeah, send out the swarm, and there's a tiger team of 3 million people. It's awesome. But it's groundbreaking in so many ways. And I read a similar article, but I think it was from Sam Altman, that had talked about OpenAI and the application of its use in the medical sector, and how I think they did a poll. It might have been UK actually. They did a poll, and they were talking about the effectiveness of a doctor versus ChatGPT. Now, these were obviously online consultations. And the funny thing wasn't necessarily the results. I think they're about 80, 90% close. So whatever the doctor would ask, ChatGPT was pretty close. It was how empathetic was the response from the AKA doctor, right? And ChatGPT won out, like by a huge margin. So it's almost all the way the algorithms are serving people as well. It's the way they're saying it. It's not what you do necessarily. It's almost how you say it too. So that's pretty interesting because, you need empathy in the medical field. It's an important facet, I think. And I think doctors get desensitized to it over time. But if you've got a tool that's relatively new in that field that's outperforming you, I found that very, very interesting. Have you heard about that as well, Greg?
Yes. Yeah, I've heard there's a huge number of these now because what it is general human infrastructure. So human infrastructure being roads, rail, the internet, like cloud processing, like instant messaging. This is now just a fundamental human piece of infrastructure. We can give data to a computer, and it can figure things out itself. So if you apply that, you could take any profession in the world, and the tasks where that ability to be able to read and revise and see patterns in lots and lots of data supersedes intuition, it's going to happen. So, you could say doctors, politicians, finance, accountants, lawyers, counseling, psychologists, teachers. I don't know. It depends on the bond that children feel with the teacher, etc. There's what ultimately, and this is actually kind of the secret answer to the entire question of how AI will change my job. It requires that people actually truly reflect on what a job is, and what components make up a job. I've personally got when I mentor people, one of the things I tell them is there's 3 things you need to know. Okay, there's jobs, careers, and roles. A role is a set of responsibilities that you take on and a duty to fulfill those responsibilities. A job is a role that pays you. And a career is multiple roles across time. Don't conflate the 3. They are very, very different. For example, you can have a career as a mother. A mother is a role. First of all, you're a baby mother, then you're a toddler mother, then you're a young boy or girl mother, then you're a mother of teenagers, then you're a mother of young adults, etc. Someone doesn't pay you a wage of 50 grand a year generally to be a mother, but it is a role. Now, if we're thinking here, well, how does AI change that? I'd be like, well, how does an engine change that? All right, you can use it to get your kids to soccer practice, fine, or badminton. It doesn't matter. But what is the true driver of success of motherhood? Open question. And it's kind of the same here. It's you think about even project controls. What is the true driver of success in each role at each level of the hierarchy in project controls? And within that, there will be tasks which are suited to this new tool that we've got to play with, and there'll be tasks that are absolutely not suited to that tool. And whoever figures that out the fastest, well, to be honest, they're going to make a lot of money.
Yeah.
Did you see, Greg, BT, British Telecoms? They want to cut 55,000 jobs by 2030
Yep.
and replace, I think, is it a fifth with AI? Whatever that means.
Yes. Well, if you actually read into the numbers, I think a lot of those are because their broadband rollout is coming to an end, so it's a natural project roll off. But I think it was something like 10 or 20,000 are going to be replaced with AI. Yeah, because to be honest, like this kind of AI is almost the death of the call center.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
Almost.
But it's quite interesting, though, because AI is going to look very different in 2030 to what it is now.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting that they've predicted a fifth of jobs.
Yes.
Do they know something we don't?
Well, maybe they've got someone who actually understands the impact of the tech. Not the tech itself is almost irrelevant. It's the impact of the tech. So, I was having a conversation a couple of weeks ago with the CIO of a company, and I said, my personal forecast is that spending on IT in construction is going to increase by about 600% within the next 5 years. And he was like, whoa, like, why do you think that? And I said, well, the general spending on IT for a construction company is about 0.2 to 0.5% of revenue. In banking, it's 3 to 5%. They've already gone through this trend generally.
Yeah.
And if you actually, and part of the reason for that is that the underlying technological infrastructure that we had around the 90s, 2000s, and 2010s was more geared to financial transactions than it was to automation of white-collar thinking and construction site dynamics. But now, the new kid on the block is geared to white-collar thinking and some elements of construction site dynamics. So you can see that this wave is going to roll through. And to be honest, it's one of these ones where if there's a garden that you haven't harvested yet, you're going to get a real good heart. You're not searching around to find where the berries are. They're literally all over the floor, and you're almost just like squashing them because there's no room to step. It's kind of like that in construction.
Yeah, but you also brought up schools, teachers.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this debate around, head teachers are having it in the UK, around how schools keep up with AI. And a couple of episodes ago, Martin asked Val and myself, what we would tell our kids today in terms of schooling and university and what to study and all of that. And my question back to Martin was like, you got to ask yourself, are schools even relevant? Why do they exist? Are they relevant in the current form they're in? Will they future-proof our kids? And to a certain extent, I think yes, the whole social aspect of it. But the content and the way they teach, I'm not so sure. I don't know. What do you think?
Syllabuses change over time depending on the prevailing conditions. None of us have learned. All of us have basically done some bits of engineering. All of us have. Okay? How many of us know how to use one of those angled tables? I don't even know the name of them, and those rulers to... That was taught in schools, and it's suddenly not anymore. So there's two things here. One is the structural relevance of schools, and the second is the individual methodologies and tactics of achieving the school mission today. I got asked this question when I was in Oman from a university lecturer who was like, the kids are running circles around me. And my response back to them was, don't be so bloody lazy. Your job is to impart knowledge and then to test to make sure that knowledge has been absorbed and the individual has put in the effort required to develop themselves as a person, not just retain knowledge. That is essentially the essence of the job. Your proxy for doing that is to get people to write essays. Now, technology has come out that writes the essays for them. Cool. How about you flip the table? How about they're no longer writing essays? They have to do a presentation into a camera, and then an AI assesses their presentation, and you don't have to do 200 hours of marking anymore. Like, you can design the system any which way you want to design it, so long as you're achieving the mission. Be creative and stop being so bloody lazy in your thinking.
So other than you, though, who's teaching the teachers?
Good one.
That I don't actually know. My wife's a teacher and a bunch of my friends are teachers, which is why I know this about teaching. Because my friend actually called me up and was like, Greg, how do I do this? And I had like a 3-hour conversation where that was essentially the answer. I'd flip the entire model on its head, and I'd make sure that the human effort was delivered in full sight, but the marketing effort and the admin effort was taken over by robots, as opposed to the essay is set by humans, and then the delivery of the test is done by a robot under fraud. Like, just flip it on its head.
Yeah, there's so many applications of this. I think you're right. I think we have to remember what school really was born out of. It was originally to serve the industrial age, right? I mean, so the structure itself needs to be flipped, is my opinion. You can almost go back to, as you said, if we go back to outcomes, what's the purpose of school? Societal needs are changing all the time, and I think the reason why I talk about AI, I've been talking about machines and Elon and lots of things for so much time, is because they're fun in a really disruptive manner, and I like things that disrupt in a positive way. And this is probably the disruptor of our generation, I think, in terms of advancements. Right? We've kind of gone through various things. I think the internet was a huge step forward. Obviously, we remember just a little bit before the internet, and then things changed, right?
My old Nokia 6210 before the internet and all of this. And my phone before that, which had one of those leather cases with a plastic front on it.
You're spoiled.
You remember growing up, gents, like you didn't have any device to remember your friends' phone numbers. You memorized that.
I had a Tamagotchi.
Buttons. Yeah?
You had the rolling one, remember?
Yeah, my mum had this one where I could press the button of the letter of their surname and it would pop up, and my mum had written the number. And
the old Rolodex. Yeah, the Rolodex. Yeah, I had one of those.
And then I remember getting the first phone through, and it cost 12p to text. And I remember I'd text my mum like, "Hey, mum," and I was like, I don't know, like 8, sitting next to her, and she's like, "Stop it."
Like, hello world.
Do you remember just getting pissed off if anyone had a 9 or a 0 in their number, because you'd have to go all the way around. You're like, oh, fuck. It's 999, so you go too much waiting, We're still impatient back then, but it's a different impatience now. Now the biggest problem is if the Wi-Fi goes down in the house, and no one's got Netflix to stream.
Like if you kind of do a master zoom, I love reading books about the history of the development of humanity and the development of tech and things like that. And if you zoom out, the only thing that's really changed now is it's just going faster. That's it. Like, shit happens all the time. Like, it just used to take longer. Like, you got to think like, oh, we've got a marathon race. The development of the car is going to make everyone cheat. No, just have people standing on the course and go, you're disqualified. Okay, cool. Like, the only thing is that you're right. We've gone through 3 massive revolutions in the past 25 years. First was the internet, which has basically disrupted the entire planet. Like, every single industry was disrupted. Every bank, like bank closures all over the high street. Why? People want online banking. They don't want to do this. You've got the vast majority of billion-dollar companies that have been created in the last 25 years are internet businesses. Amazon, Netflix, Google. And then we had the second generation was the social media disruption. So this is where all marketing got destroyed. It was no longer, oh, do you want to put on my billboard? No, I want to get an influencer on Instagram and get them to do it, or I want Mr. Beast to take my chocolate and advertise that kind of thing. Like we've gone through the social media revolution, which if you remember, upended elections, and there was a big question about how does democracy work in an age where the person with the biggest book and a bit of science can actually influence a vast population on the direction of a country. And now we're just going through a third, which is I've got this tech that can do a lot of stuff that I thought only I could do. What does that do? So it's kind of like, if you zoom out, it's no different than last Tuesday. It's just that each one is new in its own way. Like the three of us here, I'm sure we'd be like, yeah, social media, of course. Like, of course that exists, and kids are on this TikTok thing. I'm not on any of it, but yeah, I understand it. And the internet, yeah, I run an internet company. I use it every day. We're on the internet now. That's really cool. Imagine without internet, like. And do you know what? In 10 years, we'll be like, yeah, AI, why would I write an essay? Why would I do a project controls report? That's mental. Like, why wouldn't I just get this to do it? Like, am I some kind of caveman? Like, what? You want me to write a report with a pencil? Like, are you nuts? Like, what are you on about? Like, it's just that level of transition. There's nothing really that different about it.
So gents, how often do you use? I mean, we're talking about it, but how often do you follow your own medicine? Do you use AI, ChatGPT type products? How often a day, in a general work day, would you apply this tool or these tools?
50% of all the emails I send.
I knew it. I was checking.
Predictive text. To be honest, if it's a long email, yes. If it's any kind of process documentation, I get the AI to write it first, and then I go in and alter it to what I think it should be. Because obviously, I've got teams, so I need to do process systems, tools, culture, all of this kind of stuff, training. So any process documentation, I'll get it to draft. Obviously, I'm directing teams, so I'm in more of the manager and lead, so it's a bit less. But I do know my team. So, for example, my sales team will literally go, hey, we want to be able to tell the world that this thing exists. These are the customers. How should we say it? And sometimes they actually just post the generative AI answer on, like, as a picture. And we're like, oh, we asked it. This is what it said, kind of stuff. Generative AI in process-driven operations, like marketing, that's like 80% of all the jobs. 80% of all the tasks. That is steaming over right now. Write me a copy, awesome. Design me a picture, do me an advertising campaign, write me my release cadence. Yeah, sure.
Well, I just saw one the other day where you can get it to write in VB, right, which is the mother tongue of all the Microsoft products. So you get it to write a presentation in PowerPoint in VB, paste the VB in a new module, and you've got a PowerPoint. And I think,
there's something called GitHub Copilot. So for people who don't know, GitHub is kind of the central repository for software code on the internet. Microsoft bought it for some crazy amount. I think it was like 50 billion or something. And they actually have, like, all of this OpenAI actually for coding existed like 5 years ago. And it's called GitHub Copilot, and it's $10 a month. And you can just say, I want code written in Python to color Greg blue, make Val look like a pirate, and show Dale on the moon. And it will literally write you all the code to do it, to the point where there are actually businesses that have been started, software businesses, where none of the people in the business could code. They just told it what to do. Now, if you give that to someone who can't code, suddenly they can create whatever. If you give that to someone who can code, oh my word, the amount they can produce is crazy, because they'll just, like, it's almost in one hand, they'll tell it to do it, and then on the other, they'll review the code and, like, change that, ship, go back, tell it to do, and it's like it's like a production line like I've never seen.
The data scientists in my team are that next level where
Yeah.
I'm sort of, the former that you're talking about, right? I'm like these menial tasks, and they're like next level. Like I'm like, write me the code. They're like writing the code and also reviewing it, critically reviewing it. But I feel like Greg, the way you explain it, you're almost going, act like Greg Lawton and give me, because ChatGPT probably knows how to act like Greg Lawton, right?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
it
it would. I mean,
consumes our personality.
I've seen it do some pretty interesting things. Like if you want to know, I think we were talking about it last time, and I said, your limit is your imagination. So for anyone out there who hasn't actually applied it, creativity is such a great commodity in this space right now. If you have generative AI and you have no idea what you're doing, you can start with a prompt of, I have no idea what I'm doing. So generative AI can get you from A to B, I think from a learning capacity and from a production capacity. So you can literally minimize your step from having nothing to being a solopreneur in a business. So let's say you want to start a market. You're really interested in, I don't know, a pet store. Build me a pet store. Provide me the HTML code. Create an e-commerce site. Blah blah blah. Done. Right now, products. Right, I want to drop ship, or I want to source products that are cheaper from, I don't know, China or maybe somewhere else. Right, great. You could probably do all that in a day if you're smart. Right, if you knew that it could do it.
You can write and publish a book on Amazon in under an hour using ChatGPT.
Oh, that's a challenge. I think we should do that.
No, you
Let's
can.
write a book.
Alan Barnard, previous guest of ours, Dr. Alan Barnard, he did it. Yeah.
That would be great. That would be great. The how-to books. See if you can break Amazon by just putting 30,000 books out a year. You'd have to have a pseudonym.
Yeah.
Where's
I'd love to
where's the line on that? Where's the line on creativity? Do you credit AI, Greg, when you borrow its capability, or is that too humanistic?
Do I credit Excel when I create a spreadsheet?
A little bit.
Like
people know that you did that.
Yeah. Well, it's like the way to think about this is I'm going to go macroeconomics. In the individual microeconomics, you can pull this argument to pieces, but at macroeconomics, money, everything works for money. Money is just the ability to get people to spend time doing stuff that you want them to do. And the ultimate end is people. Like, you don't spend money on materials, you spend money on people digging up materials. Even if they're using machines, even if they're doing generative AI, the ultimate end is always people in some regard. So it's kind of like, I imagine there's this core group of like the most fundamental tasks that have to happen in a very small society. Gather water, find wood for fire, find food, build shelter, that kind of stuff. And then it kind of goes out and out and out and out. And right now, that circle is so enormous in the Western world that actually it can almost feel just magic in between, where I can just have Japanese whiskey shipped to my house because I clicked on something on the internet. Well, actually, the internet is just connecting people ultimately in some way. So if you think about, well, who do you credit? Unless our goal as a society is to be ruled by a sentient machine of some kind, it always comes down to a person. So either I take the credit for, the machine I've built, as in literally I told it to do the report. But you know what? I give the credit to all the data scientists that created the algorithm. But I don't give the credit to the algorithm itself. It's a thing. I don't credit a hammer with the fact that I was able to hammer nails. I was smart enough to use a hammer, and I put the nails in the wood and held it there. Like that. That's how I'm thinking about this. Again, it's nothing special. It's just a tool. Do I credit the internet like this ethereal thing that isn't alive? It's a thing that does stuff in the world, but it's not sentient. Do I credit the internet with the fact that medicine got shipped to my house? It's like,
But it is different because, it's got a few influencing people scared, right? Not scared, but concerned about regulation, right? So
It
what are they worried about?
it feels different. Like
Mm.
the thing that matters the most in the world is how people feel. It feels different because it's doing stuff that is innately, like, deep within our own senses. So we are a visual species. Anything we see, like, that other people produce, feels human. Like, how do you tell if something's human? Well, it looks human and it behaves human and it sounds human and it smells human and it speaks human, which is sound, etc. It's basically sight and sound and a little bit of smell. What we've got now, and in today's society, since the internet, like things like sending an email from a person was on 100% of people, or sorry, 100% of emails were sent by people. They're not anymore. That's the problem. It's things like something we innately felt was human is now no longer 100% human. That's a big problem.
Is that why we need regulation? No, what's the crux of that? Because that's have a bit of buzz about why it needs to be controlled.
We 100% need regulation. 100%. Like, this is people have just invented gunpowder. Some people are using it to light a room inefficiently. Some people are using it to light a fire. And somebody's like, if I stick this in a small metal container and hit the end, I can kill people. Like, it's just a tool. So this, to be honest, is for me, this is a personal opinion. This is Cambridge Analytica. So network scientists, so my co-founders are network science, and I have studied elements of network science. Network scientists knew that you can manipulate social networks to change the behavior of people. Small changes in behavior, but you can change perception. If people are glued to their phone 3 hours a day, and you can pipe to them at specific times, specific psychological triggers, they are more predisposed to make a certain decision when faced with a scenario. There's like a famous example that, like, a bunch of researchers gave 50 people a cold cup and 50 people a warm cup. Literally was like, oh, could you hold that? What's a time a shoelace, blah, blah. And then half an hour later, introduced them to someone and was like, what did you think? What did you feel about that person? And it literally was, I felt that person was distant and cold. I felt that person was very friendly and warm. Like, you can predispose people's behavior that powerfully. So if you can do that, and I can make a deep fake image of Dale telling me that he hates project management, like, you can start to ruin people's reputation. You can start to do a bit like this kind of thing. And the pace in which there's a wider thing as well, because the disruption can be so enormous on jobs and the economy that there actually needs to be a gentle pacing to allow for transition of people between jobs and basically training. Because what you can have, and this is a bit extreme, so it won't be like this, but what you can have is a small percentage of the population educated in how this stuff works and understanding how to create businesses and how to, like, gear economics. And basically they wipe out with 200 people a business of 10,000 people. So what do those 10,000 people do? Like, there needs to be some kind of adjustment period of that.
But isn't that just straight up capitalism? I mean, that's the idea of it. Is, competition is competition. If you're not growing, you're dying, kind of thing.
Yeah, but at the same, there is competition, but at the same time, you can think sociologically. Like, we don't live in a society which is purely capitalist. There are, like, the role of government is to protect citizens and to provide services across citizens that are for the benefit of society, not for the singular pursuit of GDP or profit without thought of isolation of that profit. So, for example, profit going to sing. That's literally the tax system. That's why we have a graded tax system. The rich pay a higher percentage of tax, like unless you start dodging it with capital gains, but generally on income, like that's what that's for. So, whilst capitalism can follow this, like think of it, capitalism is doing this. It is doing this and thinking, I can get rid of all these BT. I can get rid of 10,000 jobs. Like let's get rid of them before the government like comes to its senses, realizes that something's happening here, and actually steps in to stop us doing this stuff. This is the same as crypto,
So,
which is
are
also
you
the same
saying-
as Cambridge Analytica. Like it literally is brand new tech that people are abusing before regulators can come in and go, wait a minute, like we didn't realize that this could blow the roof.
So you're saying then government is responsible for regulation?
Government is responsible for the absolute limit of regulation, which is the law. The regulation above that, that is a much grayer area. That's for consumers and society to decide. I think
So
the
I feel like-
fundamental flaw is the government's problem, and we don't have a fundamental flaw right now.
Okay. So I feel like governance or regulation is only part of it because it needs to be coupled with education, right? So back to your gunpowder analogy. If people knew the dangers of gunpowder, right, and they know how to use it safely, and they're educated on it, then we have a better chance, along with regulation, to be safe, to use it safely.
Yeah, this is a timing thing, by the way. This is literally a timing thing because what you need is a fundamental shift in the means of production. Is essentially what this is. It's a shift in the means of production. It's just pure theory of wealth of nations, Adam Smith. Like you've got a change in the means of production. You need a change in the education and change in the understanding of society and change in the law to track along with it. When the means of production does this, and it always hits first generally, but then the gap is too big, that's where you get this disjointedness where shit starts happening in society that ultimately you were like, I didn't want that to happen. When they track like that literally just a bit ahead, when they track like this, you've got stagnation. When you've got that, you've got general innovation. When you've got that, you've got like a good tension. And when they're like that, you're completely wild. You want the pace of them to be relatively the same.
That's really insightful. And I want to bring back to project controls in a sense, because you said you could talk about two things, AI and careers.
Yeah. Before the fact, yeah.
And if we go back to the notion that a lot of let's take planners, right? A lot of planners have earned their stripes, got the scars, actually working the detail, understanding how to pull schedules together, learning about, what makes a good schedule, what doesn't, going through those health checks and understanding logic density and what this all means and how to interpret that. And it's very, very experience based, right? Particularly the best planners, they have lots of breadth, lots of depth and knowledge and understanding of how the schedule integrates across the project, from commercial attributes all the way to putting things on at site. Are we saying potentially that AI will take away that element of low value transactional work? And if so, then how will they gain the experience necessary to become subject matter experts?
So there's a lot of components to answer that question, but I'll try and do a bit of a pyramid principle and just answer single sentences, and then I can elaborate on them. Yes, AI will get rid of a lot of transactional and some high value activities. For example, machine learning can learn stuff better than humans.
Yeah.
For data. Okay. So transactional data-driven activities, report writing, updating of schedules, or even creation of schedules to an extent, this will happen. So number one, it will happen. Number two, the value of the planner remains. And it remains because of two reasons. Number one, accountability. If I'm having heart surgery, I don't want a machine to come in and go, I am going to operate on you. Get the fuck out my room. Like, I want the guy's like, oh yes, I've won the Nobel Prize for heart surgeries. I'm having you. Again, how people feel. So that's number one. I've yet to come across a contractor who will wheel a piece of AI in front of a client to talk to the client and go, yeah, talk to that. Okay, let's see how that works out. So that's number one. And number two is roles are based on responsibilities. Responsibilities are based on contextualized workflows. Contextualized workflows are based on tasks, and AI automates tasks. There are responsibilities, workflows, and tasks to the job that this singular tool is not designed to do. It's a singular tool. If you're a hammer, everything feels like a nail. Not everything in the world is a nail. So those two things. So the value of the planner will remain. Third, because you've automated a lot of manual stuff and the value of the planner remains, what you have is a thinning of the herd. The people who offer no value, who just sit there and type at a computer, they're gone. That complete waste of 40 grand a year is now gone for the project. Okay? You're left with those well-educated, well-considered individuals who know planning and not just planning, the engineering process and the procurement process and the social dynamic and all of these kinds of things. And then what that leaves on the bottom end is you can start to get a more sharper tip to the spear. And what I mean by that is planning is a scale operation. You can do a piece of work that takes 6 hours, which affects the work of 5,000 people taking 1,000 hours each. Like, it's a scale operation. Because it's a scale operation, you can have scale impact. So you can do an analysis and you can do a piece of work over the course of a number of weeks that does genuinely cut 50 million of cost out of a project, or get something delivered faster, or reduce risk, or whatever. And that those people can rise to the top because they're no longer constrained by a career path that necessitates that you have to produce 1,000 graphs. So it's almost that you're taking these graduates that are, 150 IQ, and you're making them step through this quagmire of transactional rubbish, but under the guise of getting experience. If you wanted, you can condense that hard, like the real experience that they need, to produce out the deeply skillful individual. There are developers in the world in their 40s and 50s who are on well into $1 million a year. There's developers in the world who are in their late 20s who are on the way to that kind of thing. This has happened in development. So that's actually how I see this pace of change. If you're in that, bottom 40%, either you're going to have to change your mindset, or you're going to have to face reality and probably find something else to do.
So if I ask another question on that then, so the really experienced professionals, let's say project planning, because we're talking about planners in this instance, they could look at a bit of information, whether it's an S-curve, whether it's a critical path, whatever it might be, schedule related, and they'll take one look at it, and because of the experience they have working the tool, understanding the source data, how it all works, at a single glance they'll go, that doesn't look right. If we don't have people working the tools, will they still have the ability to look at an outcome and go, that doesn't look right?
Of course, it's actually about. So this is where shit training will no longer fly. Is essentially what this is. So you can't disguise. Oh, you have to do 7 years of experience on this before. Who said you need 7? Like what? No, you need a certain amount of exposures. Is what you need. And in 7 years, if I've got 7 exposures to a certain thing, why can't I just get that set of exposures in 6 months? This is actually the whole thinking behind, well, what in the entrepreneurial space, what is the point of university? Because actually, like when you get into the entrepreneurial space and you're building businesses and things like that, the fundamental skill I do still believe in university, but the fundamental skill is I've got a problem, analyze it to understand I don't have the skill set to solve it, and then the competence to go out and find someone who does have that skill set and get them to teach you how to do it. Learn on the job, learn enough that you can hire someone full time who is far more skilled than you at that, and then be a good manager. Like, that's fundamentally what you need to do to do labor scaling generally. So, like, that's kind of the principle underlying this.
Just as a thought while we're thinking, with hard jobs, do you think it's going to be, because being on a project in any capacity, I think you need a certain level of grit and resilience and capability. It's not necessarily a one hat role. You talked about roles before. I agree with you. And people who do good then generally make a career out of being in projects, and it's different for different projects. They're hard jobs. My gut feeling tells me that the current generation doesn't like necessarily doing things hard. They like doing things easier, which is not a bad thing, by the way. So when I say, there's a concept of the lazy project manager, right? Where, if you can do the job in half a day, but it takes others a day, that's a smart thing to do. So being lazy is efficient, right? You don't want to do difficult jobs if you don't have to. You want to compress things if you can. Yeah, go.
So I spoke to Eddie Obeng, as you know, a little while ago at EVA, and we lost a bit of the recording, but he said that some of the smarter project managers actually look for or create problems because it actually elevates how good they might be. Because if you're delivering an easy project, it never gets the limelight, it never gets the attention in the boardroom, and so that's opposite to what you're saying.
So I think there's a brand of people that would definitely like that. But I'm also thinking there's a brand of people who are going to shy away from the industry, that are, they're going to create a side hustle, Greg, that, if money is what drives it, they're going to create a side hustle, generate wealth, whatever, and do other things. Other things that are probably easier, hobbies, travel, family. Do you think that'll be?
My personal view is I don't think the world will change on this. I think that if you take a population of 100 individuals, there's going to be a few that are incredibly vocal. There'll be a few that are incredibly determined and are absolute killers in whatever they do. There'll be a few that are lazy. There'll be a few that just don't have the capability to kind of proceed. And there'll be a few that have a balance. Like, life's not all about one thing, and success isn't just driven by a number or driven by a profile or whatever. And in this view, if you give them all access to social media, only some of them are going to engage. So, like, my sense is that that statement of things like the youth of today is inherently lazy or looking for an easy way out, I'd actually say that's probably, I would say it's confirmation bias. I would probably say that those that's in that population of 100 that are predisposed to that are also the ones that are predisposed to the media that people are consuming. But put that aside, I believe that I've got a hypothesis that just like there's been a U-turn on a lot of woke movements in the last couple of years, where that bulk of people have actually gone, do you know what? Actually, enough is enough. Like, come on, you like. And I know you like getting all riled up, but you've now asked for me to vote on. You've forced me to vote on this, so I'm actually going to tell you what I think. It's like the world doesn't think the way that you tiny 1% think. It actually thinks like this. I think here it's more the world has worked in terms of jobs. If everybody tried to do a side hustle, then it's just a job in a different name. You'd still work for customers, i.e. your boss. You'd still have suppliers, i.e. your employees. Like, it's the same. But in general, I think that it's just like this whole circle, it will kind of peter out and it'll be jobs, not hustles. And then if you're looking at jobs, it's the ones, the most highly valued jobs in society. There's 4 classes of highly valued jobs in society. Resource extraction, because every single thing that we do, it comes from a resource of some kind. And if you're very, very good at it. Transactions, finance, essentially. Transformation, which is manufacturing, all of this. And profile, societal profile. So any jobs that you've got in kind of those 4 elements where you reach the pinnacle, you're going to be earning a very tidy sum. Like, seeing as we're talking about schedulers, if you're good at scheduling, you're clever, diligent, and you have the right mentors, you're easily in the top 1% of earners. Easily. Like, some of them are in the top 0.1% of earners. Like, you know this, we do Plan Rich. I met a guy yesterday. He actually showed me his payslip. 272,000 he earned last year. Project planner. So it's like,
it's incredible.
It's you could earn massive bucks if you emerge as a professional at the top of the profession.
So I do think I agree with your point that I think it's a great time to be alive to earn and learn, because it literally is all around you and available. And it does help, decide whether or not when you finish school that you don't need to go into university to necessarily make a good earning, a living, a career, whatever it's going to be. Do you consider then, where's the line with things like ChatGPT and I think the education industry came out with this first, but does it impact projects the same? The question is ChatGPT cheating, or is it just utilizing another tool, as you've kind of put it across, which I think is the case? It's a tool to be used and abused, but
it's a tool to be used, and it will like any tool, it will amplify the underlying skill and the underlying weakness of people. So if you are a very, very skilled, diligent planner that's just swamped with transactional reporting work, well, lo and behold, you are no longer swamped with transactional reporting work, and you can put your mind to making those projects faster, cheaper, less risky, and more sustainable. If you are, to be honest, someone who's just got lucky and hasn't been noticed that they're probably above their station, then what you're going to be doing is asking GPT and things how to do your job, and it's going to tell you a wrong answer, and you're going to get found out. Like, you won't be able
Yeah,
to
I
hide
find that.
behind. You'll just be like, oh, so the strategy you submitted. We're not in the chip manufacturing business. That's a
you're
very
now
strange
screwed.
one. That is. You're like, okay, I've been rumbled here. I've been rumbled.
Yeah. What were you going to say, Dad?
I said, you and I are screwed.
Yeah, well, look, I think editing is going to be, I mean, reading properly, any proofing is really important to this. But I think the other thing is this PDCA, right? I think when I started out in projects, it was planning too. And, plan, do, check, act. Is that changing now to kind of prompt, do, check, act? Is that the next kind of look at it? Are we going to prompt first?
What do you mean by prompt?
As in use ChatGPT to kind of build the base layer, the foundation layer, and then do it beyond that, and we check that and review that. But planning in itself is
prompt check.
Not
Prompt check?
ChatGPT. So
Prompt
I'll
do?
bring it above. So ChatGPT was the first and most widely used piece of generative AI in the history of humanity. So it's a tagline, but it is a section of generative AI. The question: will we be using generative AI to prompt, plan, check, do, etc.? Yes. Now, so as you guys know, I run an AI company that does automation algorithms for scheduling, and I've got to make trade-off decisions. I've made the trade-off decision that I am not going to deploy resources into automation creation of schedules yet, before analytics, reporting, and updating has been largely automated and enhanced with this AI. And the reason is, it's better to have an average plan that you understand and can talk to people about and live and work, than a perfect plan you do not trust because you don't understand it. Like, if someone just gave me a financial model and went, Greg, that's your finances for the year, just follow it, I'd be like, no. Like, have you got my insurance in here? Like, have you got my car? Like, I'd have to go through and understand every single component of it before I felt comfortable. But could it prompt me and go, hey, so I've mapped out what I think your planned expenditures are for the year. Could you check it for me and tell me if I've missed anything? Now, that's really useful, actually, because it's easier to review something than it is to create something from scratch. So, for example, a schedule, it'd be like, hey, I've planned the prelims, but only to a level 3. Could you check it to see if you want to do a different build strategy and if I've hit the nail on the head? That is very, very useful. But like I said, it's about coming full circle. It's the human computer interaction, or the human algorithm interaction, which is actually the really, really important bit, not the algorithm itself. We can produce schedules now. They're really easy to produce. Like, I've got thousands of tens of thousands, I don't know how many schedules I've got a lot of them. Feed them all in, cool, produce me a schedule that can do it. Would I blindly no, I wouldn't blindly trust that. Like, even it's my tech, I'd be like, no, I don't want to do this. Like, that's not how this thing works. You're asking me to be accountable for something. Do I believe that we can get to that prompt stage? Yes, I do.
Yeah, so I think it's I think you're right. I don't think it's automation I'm talking about. I think it's the prompting. But you've got to know what to prompt and then what to look for.
Exactly. The skilled planner.
The competency is still there. And I think back to competencies, I think the best kind of analogy I have is like driving a car, right? So in most countries, you still need to do the competency log, which is hours driven, right? With an expert at your side instructing and guiding you as you learn a conscious behavior that eventually becomes an unconscious competence. And I think you still need that on projects, but you can potentially compress it with the application of these tools as your kind of driving seat instructor. They can be there by your side. The co-pilot is a great name for it that you mentioned before, Greg. Is that how you see it? More like a co-pilot sitting next to you, navigating these various problems, helping you review code, plans, schedules, health checks, etc.
Yeah, that's basically exactly it. It's a co-pilot, and like bringing it all the way up to the top. And every single role inside a PMO will have its own individual co-pilot. You'll have a cost co-pilot, a risk co-pilot. Like they might just be. It depends how they're branded. If they're all branded the same name, like the Dale, I don't know. Like the Dale can do everything. Or you might have like the Val and the Greg. I don't know, but basically every single role will have its own co-pilot, and the actual benefit to projects is net massive positive, because the world does not work in linear sequences. The world works in power laws. So if suddenly projects are 5% cheaper and faster, then it's not 5% more projects that will be commissioned. The cost benefit will be crazy. You'll get something like 20% more projects commissioned, which will actually increase the overall job pool in projects. So actually, I see this as a massive net positive thing.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because you mentioned benefits, right? And we've been trying to crack this one for a while in controls. I feel like we've been discussing outcomes and benefits management for a long time. And all three of us are part of Zero Construct. Big shout out to James Bowles for everything he's doing there. Will AI allow us better decision making during project delivery for better outcomes, which will probably be realized way after the final deliverables delivered on a project? So it's all about, can we make decisions that have better outcomes for communities they serve eventually, for the environment, for all the targets we as a civilization or project delivery teams are trying to deliver for? Because it feels like
My answer to that would be yes, but because AI is a subset. If I said this statement, it would also hold true. Would more detailed data analytics that considered the through life use and addition of a built asset during construction enable decisions to be made that maximize the return on investment? Yes. AI is just a subset of automating and doing elements of that analysis. So yeah, so for example, like you could look at the past, but I'd rather be looking at the future. I'd rather have, like, for example, a full digital twin that is modeling how city behavior is going to work, and then when a change proposal is put forward, you can at a lower cost point, because actually it's about cost. Like if you had to rerun all the digital twin models to understand the full life cycle impact of a change, it would be hundreds of thousands, if not millions, and take 6 months. Well, what if you could do it now for $100 and it takes 1 hour? That's the difference here. So yes, you would be making better decisions because you can afford to do the analysis now.
So we've spoken a lot about solutions that AI can provide for us on projects. What problems does it give us?
It gives us problems of laziness. It gives us problems of computer said no, basically. So you need that competence and you need that accountability to hold true. It also gives us a short-term test of management and leadership competence in the industry. Like, is the decentralized network of managers and leaders in the industry equipped and capable to lead their people through this change? Like, the people in finance had to lead their companies through the internet. The marketing leaders had to lead their companies through the social media revolution. Now it's construction's turn, and from my knowledge, not many construction managers were previously bankers or marketers.
What about reliance, right? Reliance on AI and technology. Because if something catastrophic happens and we can't use the tool, what do we have to fall back on if we haven't actually rolled up our sleeves?
So this is a very interesting. I put forward a doomsday scenario, like trying to influence some policy, because it's telling when a lot of the tech CEOs go, you need to get an eye on this. It's very telling. There's a double-edged sword there, but like a doomsday scenario. Let's imagine that this whole thing about AI enables a company to be twice as productive. What that means is that a company can take on twice the amount of work with the same number of people. Okay. What happens if all of that technology was developed and is hosted in a foreign country? What happens if that foreign country turns aggressive? Well, suddenly, half of your entire workforce is 100% loyal to another country and will walk out the next day on unlimited protest leave. So there is a need for sovereign capability in all of this, because if this fundamental technology is underpinning the industrial machine of a nation, you have to secure supply. You can't leave supply. It's almost like having your entire water supply in a neighboring country and you being at war with them. Well, do you know what's going to happen? They're going to turn it off. So that was the kind of bit of the doomsday I put forward. I was like, like the UK manufactures its own bullets, that kind of stuff. What happens if you bought bullets from abroad and suddenly someone went, I'm not giving you bullets? Well, first of all, you become the first target to be invaded.
Yeah, very interesting.
A lot to ponder there. Val, I feel like we could talk to Greg for hours and hours and hours, but how much more do you want to squeeze out of him?
Oh, let's leave him alone. I'm going to see him soon, hopefully. So it's great to have you, Greg. You've obviously, you've left us a lot of things to ponder, and I'm sure the listeners are going to get a lot of value. It's one of those rounds where you listen twice and you still don't know what he's talking about, but he means what he means, and I think there is a value in saying that we still don't know, right? I mean, this is still emerging. I mean, we didn't know the harms or the impacts of social media until after, right? It's an interesting thing with humans. We tend to break things before we make them better, and we need to explore limits. A bit like the H bomb. It was not until we knew what it could do that we realized we shouldn't, and that's generally when regulation starts happening, unfortunately. But it does tend to have a bit of a cycle, doesn't it, Greg?
Yeah, you don't know for sure. Like I do actually have a book that was written 3 years before Facebook was started that basically predicted Cambridge Analytica and all of that outcome. And it was written by the guy who invented network science. It's just that he didn't know for sure. He actually says a sentence. He said, all of this could be true. And he goes, but I think it's something like he says, but it would be practically impossible to get the majority of the world's population on a social network, is what he said. So then you're like, okay,
yeah,
well, that didn't
he set limits. Yeah, exactly. The assumption. Yeah,
exactly.
That's crazy. Fantastic. Dale, anything from you?
I've got one more for you, Greg. I mean, it would be remiss of us to tell the listeners what whiskey you're drinking. Can you give them a flavor and a recommendation, perhaps?
So this is, I don't know the exact name because it was just given to me as a gift. It's a Japanese whiskey. It's actually really, really sharp. It's beautiful.
Okay.
I got it in the I got it in the post like a week ago from someone I'm mentoring, and it was just a thanks. He got promoted and is earning a lot of money now. So I'm guessing it might be an expensive one. I don't really know. I don't know. I don't really care. It's just a very nice, smooth, sharp Japanese whiskey.
Good. As long as you're enjoying it, that's the main thing. I'm having a whiskey here as well, the Fettercan Warehouse 14. Maybe I'll send you a bottle of that, Greg, or when we're next together, I'll grab you a bottle. But Val over there, being early hours of the morning, has got his coffee. So yeah, he can just watch on and be jealous. But Greg, before we let you go, as we always ask our guests, any final thoughts you want to leave our listeners with?
I think the final thoughts I'd leave people with is this. What's happening now is inevitable. Pandora's been let out of the box, and there's no putting her back in that box. So, the thing to be thinking about is, how do I start to dabble in this in a way that's just one step at a time, knowing full well that I make the decisions about what I use. You can't be forced to use anything. But it's equivalent. The smartphone's been let out of the box. People will start to buy smartphones and use smartphones around you. You're not the first anymore. This is way past the innovation stage. It's now in mass adoption stage. So the question is kind of, do you want Apple or Samsung? Now, that's the stage we're at with this AI. So I'd say if you don't have a phone or you're not playing with it, have a crack. If you're a project controller, go to Nodes and Links. It's free. Like, you can literally try it all for free. If you're just generally wanting to play, go to DALL-E, DALLE, or ChatGPT, and just have a play and see what it can do. And that's all.
Awesome.
Brilliant.
Awesome. What a way to finish. Val, any final words from you?
No, just as usual, Greg, thanks for your time. Looking forward to catching up face-to-face at some point very, very soon. I mean, internet is good and all, but, whiskey in person is much better. So thanks for your time today, mate.
Exactly. Right. See you later, gents.
Well, there you have it, folks. That is all the time we have for this episode. But remember, before you go, please do help us pay it forward and share a link to this episode on your favorite social media or on ChatGPT if you like. Once again, a massive thank you to our guest, Mr. Greg Lawton. And thank you all for listening. Till next time, we say stay safe, be disruptive, and have fun doing it. From me and Val, it's bye for now.